Hi, students. Today we're going to be talking about modeling that multiplication of decimals. Okay, before we get started, we need to understand what our whole is. So for the problems that we're doing today in class, 1 square is a whole. Based on this information, I can figure out the value of 1 long and the value of 1 unit. So I need to figure out the value of a unit of my long, and if I look, it takes 10 longs to make 1 whole. So 1 long is going to be 1/10 of my whole. If I look at my square, I need to figure out how many squares, bless you, how many squares will it take to make 1 whole? It's going to take 100 units to make my whole. So this unit represents 1/100th of my whole. So this is what we're going to be using today in our problem. When you have your problems, make sure you read the question clearly to figure out what your whole will be. So let's get started. Carol bought 4 avocados for her lunch. Each avocado cost 20 cents. How much money did Carol pay for 4 avocados? So the first thing I am going to do is I'm going to write the problem. 4 avocados for her lunch, and I know each avocado is 20 cents. So I'm going to be multiplying 20 cents times 4. Well, when I see that, this is what this means. I'm going to have 4 groups of 20 cents. That's what I'm going to put on my grid. So I am going to be shading in 20 right here. I'm going to shade in 20. So that's 20. And then I need to shade in 4 groups. So I have 1 group. I'm going to make another group of 20. That's 2 groups. I'm going to make another group. And I'm going to make 1 more group. And that is 4 groups of 20. So if I count, this is 20, 40, 60, 80. Carol paid 80 cents for her 4 avocados. This is actually a pretty easy problem. You're just making groups of the amount of the decimal. Now let's go to our next problem. We're going to be talking about modeling multiplication of decimals times decimals. This is a little different because sometimes we are tempted to subtract. But let's look at our problem. Ruth has 4/10 ounces of gravel. She put 2/10 of the gravel in a pot. How much gravel did Ruth put in her pot? So let's look at our problem. I know Ruth has 4/10 of gravel. Ruth does not have a whole gravel. She has a part of a whole. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to represent that part. So I'm going to be shading in 4/10. Okay. I'm going to shade in 4/10. This is how much gravel she has. As we can see, she does not have a whole. She has a part of a whole. She put 2/10 of the gravel into a pot. So out of those 4/10 of ounces, she's going to put 2/10 of that into her pot. So I'm going to multiply. Why am I multiplying? Word of. Of is another way of saying multiplying. She's taking 2/10 of what she has. So I'm going to be multiplying to find that amount. So I'm going to shade in how much she took out of how much of the 4/10 she took out of to put into her pot. And I'm going to shade it in with a different color. So if you notice, part of my 4/10 is covered also in blue. this is the section that we are going to count. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have 8 squares that are shaded in. Now, I know that each cube, each unit is a hundredth. So if I have 8 cube units, that means I have 8 hundredths. So she put 8 hundredths of her gravel, 8 hundredths of an ounce into her pot. Most important part when modeling multiplication of decimals times decimals, the part that is overlapped by both colors is going to be your answer. So let's get to one more problem. I'm going to be modeling multiplication of decimals. If you notice, I have 2 wholes because I'm going to show a problem where we have a whole number and a decimal, and we're going to multiply it times a decimal. So let's get started. Grecia has 1.2 pounds of sand. She gave 3/10 of the sand to her mom. How much sand did Grecia give to her mom? So let's get started with the beginning. I know that Grecia has 1.2 pounds of sand. So I'm going to shade in 1 hole and 2/10. What's in red represents the total amount of sand Grecia has. Now, out of this amount, she's going to give her mom 3/10 of the sand. So that word of means to multiply. So 1.2, so I want to find out what is 3/10 of 1.2. So I'm multiplying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to shade it in. Now, this sometimes tricks us. Do I just shade in the whole? No, you're shading in the whole decimal. So I'm going to shade in this box. And I'm also going to shade in this box too, because this also is included in the amount of sand she has. So just like in our last problem, I am going to count where my colors overlapped. So I have 1, this is 10, 10, and 10. So I have 30, 10. I have 3/10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 6 hundredths. 3/10 plus 6 hundredths is equal to 36 hundredths. So Grecia gave her mom 36 hundredths of a pound of sand. Okay, this is our lesson for modeling multiplication of decimals. If you have any questions, send me a message through Dojo, Teams, or Google Classroom.